What's up, everybody? We're back. Today, we're going to talk about working with multiple files in Vim. We're going to talk about working with buffers, windows, and tabs. I'm going to give you a rundown of how these work, and I'm going to show you how I like to use them in my normal workflow. So let's get into it. We're going to start by opening a single file in Vim. When you open a file, Vim reads the contents of that file into memory into what's known as a buffer. So as we are going here and making our changes, these don't actually get written back to the file until we use the write command. Then you can see that it's been written. So we can open another file, and now we see a different buffer. The original buffer we were working with, though, nothing has happened to that. It's just simply inactive. It's in the background. So you can use the ls command to see the list of buffers that we have open. In this case, each buffer has a unique number. It'll show you the file name and what line number you are. So we can switch to a different buffer by using B and the number to switch between them. And we can remove a buffer by using BD and the number here. So if we do ls now, we only have one buffer. Now, the main way I'm going to interact with this is by either cycling through using bprev or bnext, which I have mapped to these commands here so I can easily cycle through. And I'll also you can use the alternate file to open up the last buffer that you had. The normal key mapping on this is Control caret, which is impossible to type on a US keyboard. So I just use bracket A. And so many times you're just working with these two different files. You're kind of happily cycling between the two of them. One of my favorite things to do is you can actually switch to a buffer without knowing its number, even if you only know a little bit about the file name. So for example, I know I have a test file open somewhere in here. I can hit B and then test, and it will narrow it down. So in this case, it knows that this is the only file with test. It can just jump to this buffer. So what if I give it something a little more ambiguous? I can type in B and then start typing in some text here and use tab to complete and then jump to the buffer I was looking for. So sometimes that's helpful when you have a lot of buffers open. You don't want to cycle through. You don't want to look at the list. You just know, oh, I have that one file. Let me get to it. And every now and again, this list of buffers gets overwhelming. For example, if we are grepping for something here, we're working through a quick fix list, we cycle through. Now you can see we've accidentally opened a lot of buffers. It starts getting noisy when we are using our bnext and bprevious mappings to cycle through them. So one thing you can do is %BD. This is the nuclear option. It will delete every buffer. I have a key mapping I use all the time in this case, which will delete every buffer except for the buffer that I have open. Sometimes you want to work with more than one file on the same screen though. This is where windows come into play. So a window in Vim is your view into a buffer. And you always have at least one window open, but you can have as many as you really like. So in this case, we have two vertical windows. We can use the mouse here like a pro and the slide to resize it. You can use the control window and then, control W and then the equal sign to even them out. What I like to do is have one file open and its corresponding tests in the other window. So this is an easy way to work back and forth between two things. You have them both in your context there and you're good to go. When you're done, you can use Control WC to close a window, but most of the time I'll just use Control WO for only to blast away everything else and be left only with the window that I'm currently focused on. One other thing you can do with the window is you can use LCD to change directories and have a different working directory in each window here. So you can see over here, I pull up my fuzzy finder. I'm in this big project. I pull up the finder here. I'm in this minimal project. So your windows are your views into your buffers, and your view into these windows is a tab. Right now we only have one tab open, but we can use tab E to edit a new file in some new tab. And we can use GT to go back to our previous tab, and our window arrangement has stayed constant. So we can open a different set of windows on this tab and without disturbing our previous tab. You can also use TCD to change directories. And now we are in the same case we were before, where we're working on one project on one side, and over here, we're working on a different project. This is great if you have some quick thing that you need to check and you don't want to lose what you've got set up and what you've got going on. This is also great if you need to compare two things across two different projects. Maybe you're trying to reference a little bit of code or remember how you solved the problem previously. One mistake I made when I was adopting Vim was trying to use tabs in the same way I would in VS Code or Atom. So you can have one buffer in each tab, and at first that'll feel pretty natural to you. But as soon as you start working with the quick fix list, start using things like go to definition, start working with marks, really quickly this is going to fall apart on you, and you're much better off sticking with one tab, working with this buffer list, getting comfortable cycling between buffers, using the alternate file to jump back to the last buffer, working with your windows and your splits as you need them, and only really resorting to another tab when you need to break out of that window context you have. All right, there it is. So now hopefully you have a good understanding of buffers, windows, tabs, and some different ways you can use them and work with them. Peace.